When it comes to my landscape photography, one of the subjects I've always loved is mountains, and there's nothing like a good mountain portrait using the telephoto lens. Now, when you come to the Seascape, we can approach seascapes in a similar way. We can use a wide angle and pick up various elements in a big grand scene. We can also use a telephoto and zoom in and take a portrait of the sea, just like we might a portrait of the mountains. And that's what we're doing this afternoon. We're going to be taking a portrait of the sea. I had a morning here recently at this special break, and this thing only goes off under the right conditions. A big southerly swell. And I really didn't think I'd get that on this trip here because, you know, I'm only here for a few weeks, but geez, there was one last week and there's a big one pushing through now. Really big swell, just creating some fantastic shapes and sculptures. It makes for some great photography. I'm going to be using the long lens, and I've got some images in the portfolio from here across the past, literally the past 10 years. So it's just somewhere I'll always return to if I'm in the area and the swell and the light are looking promising, which they are now. So I'm here actually not at sunrise, but the afternoon. So I've learnt that the afternoon light here can be good as well. Wow, it's looking powerful. Let's go and have a look. It's just a fantastic display of power. It's very humbling. Look at this. Watch in the middle now. Here we go. Oh, it's really fun to shoot the ocean with a fast shutter speed for a change. You know, it's so common in photography. Oh gee, this is huge. So common to use a slow shutter. Look at the size of that. Listen to it. Thunder. Wow. Woo. So I'm at a fast shutter speed. Zooming right in, various focal lengths, 100 to 400, and shooting at least 2,000th of a second, but it's nice and bright now, which means I can shoot around 3200th of a second. Now, what am I looking for these images? You shoot a lot of frames in these types of scenarios, as you can imagine. It's almost like wildlife photography. I'm, at this point, more interested in very obscure, very tight, abstract shapes and details, not so much a clean breaking wave. So I could be shooting 300, 400, 500 frames here and constantly watching, just in the hopes that the ocean just does something very bizarre. You might remember this one, Ascension. I shot this in 2014. Look, this is fun. It's very fun. Wow, here we go. It's fun and sometimes intimidating when you see a monster curl up like that. Gee. Listen to it. Oh, look at the next one, guys. Oh, whoa. So I'm interested in more intimate shots here. Really tight, no sky, getting textures, shapes, color. It's portraits of the sea. People often ask me about the 100 to 400 or a 70 to 200. Honestly, once you use a 100 to 400, it's really hard to go back to the 70 to 200. It's just so handy having that extra reach. And this is the exact scenario that it's perfect for. Going in tight, or it could be a mountain scene. So very versatile. Front, here we go. Woo-wee. Wow. It's nerve-wracking listening to it and getting the glimpse of the mountains rolling in. There are mountains out there. One or two frames I'm happy with, but you just don't even have time to check. There's no point. Check when you get home. That's why you don't go down too low. Look at that. Gee, look out the back. Here we go. I love the streaks, the curtains. Here we go again. Oh, the back of the wave there looks so good. The green and the blue. Oh, it's just fun, guys. Here we go. We've lost the light and the storm's kind of coming in. kind of fits the vibe at the moment, to be honest, but without the light, the waves just look so flat in comparison to previous images. So probably what I'm going to do is slow the shutter speed down to about a 20th and just do some intentional slow shutters, bit of ICM, intentional camera movement. ISO can come down, slow the shutter down. Had to go to F11 as well. And yeah, I find about a 20th and you just pan with the wave and shoot right at that magic moment as it curls over. Sunrise now, heading back. Swell's not as big, but might clean things up a little bit. And thankfully not too much clouds, so the way the light hits the water in the morning is just unparalleled. Let's see what we can do. Always hard to know if you want to include some of the sky or not when you have that nice light there. Position myself so it's more of a gentle side light, not going too direct to the sun. Thankfully, the position of the brake and the sun this time of year works out really well. Alright, I'm back home in New Zealand and I figured it would be good to sit down here, go through some of the raw files. Let me show you the selection process. Obviously capturing subject matter like this is so different to kind of what we normally do in landscape photography, because in this scenario we're just shooting so many frames. It's almost like wildlife photography. So as you're probably aware, with my workflow I use Bridge to organize and go through my files, and then I just process in Photoshop. Selecting the files. Now if you look here, I've got to admit I've already culled through some of the raws, but I saved a few throwaways basically just to show you the process. So initially I'm running through quite quickly, and what I'm looking for is any composition or shape that just obviously stands out from the rest. So let me run through relatively fast. So here's some of the slow shutters. Now obviously these are all unprocessed as well. So I run along through. When I see one that is evidently going to be something I'd throw away, so let's maybe say out of these two, I wouldn't keep that crumbling one, I push delete and that's it, it's gone. Nice and quick. Now I keep moving along, got the thumbnails there loading on the right hand side. Again, I see something I don't like, it's a quick push of the delete button and then it's gone. Now you can see here how many of these raws there are, and this is after I've deleted quite a few already. If I'm not sure on something, I'll obviously keep it. Now in the portfolio, we want to go for quality over quantity. So I'm definitely, I'm trying to be pretty strict here about if it's worth keeping or if it's not. Delete, run on through, delete. That's a nice shape, but I think it's way too far away. Lots of background there, delete. Interesting shape, it's getting cut off on the top, delete. Not really pleasing on the eye, delete. Really nice light, not too keen on the foreground, probably not enough of a shape in the middle of the wave to make it interesting enough. I do love that light, but delete. Pretty strict, but you got to be, especially when there's this many, and I have obviously gone through and culled a few already and probably made a few other selections, so I know there's a few definite keepers in here. Delete. Delete, just not, okay, like if we look at this one, let's double tap it, opens up in Photoshop. Even with a slight crop, pull that in, now we're really zoned in on that middle of the wave. If I look, it's just lacking the main focal point for the eye. What's the main shape to be drawn to? Delete, delete, delete. I really like these ones where the wave isn't actually curling over, but again, it still needs to have that final texture to get pulled into, the final little shape, just something for the eye to really latch onto, I think. So I probably wouldn't keep that one either. Delete, delete. Okay, so get the idea with the culling. So what's the process now for one that I think has potential? What I like to do is give it a star rating. I don't do 1, 2, 3, 4. I just go straight to 5, and that is basically me saying, all right, this has potential. So if you scroll back up here towards the top, that one actually has a 5 on it. Scroll down a bit further, 5. And what I do is I right click and I sort by rating. Now anything that has a rating on it is going to be thrown down the bottom of the pile. It makes it a lot easier when it comes time to process. So as I scroll right down the bottom, here's some of the 5s, and then I know which ones I'm going to work on. And it doesn't mean these will all be kept either, but at least it just really helps me narrow down. Now, why don't we quickly look at a process of one of them. I'm going to work on one that had the flat light. This was when I was doing the slow shutters. So this is at 1/10 of a second at 400 mil. And I really love that gentle luminous glow on the inside. Not to mention the 1/10 has just really nailed the flow here. The panning has helped streak all this edge of the wave, but it's all pleasing and it's flowing in the right direction. The only thing that's thrown me off on this image is whatever has happened down here, a bit of a, it's almost like a double exposure effect where it's just kind of blended 2 tones together just the way the panning happened. Not a deal breaker, but it looks very strange, like something's gone wrong in the processing, but this is the raw. Anyway, I will crop this one. Now, often I won't crop much in my processing in general. When I'm out shooting the landscape, I'm trying to get the composition right in camera. That way I get the maximum resolution and detail in the images. When it comes to these wave ones though, I am pretty liberal with the cropping. Normally I would carry the 2x converter with me. I just didn't take it on this trip because I really didn't expect to get a big swell, because I've used this converter at this location before, being able to shoot at 800 mil. Anyway, I didn't have that on me, and the reason why I wish I did was because sometimes the frame, and like I said, this is 400 mil, sometimes the best shot could be right in like that, which is going to be more around the 600, etc. Anyway, again, back to the cropping, I won't hesitate on some of these because they are relatively abstract and I don't need that outside edge. Because I have a 60 megapixel camera, even if I crop in about here, which I think is probably the better composition, look down the bottom, still 43 megapixels, really high resolution still. So I don't care if I need to crop in slightly. I might just go a touch wider actually after all. Okay, about there. Again, this is one of the really flat light ones. The key will be to bring out some tonal range. Let's get some dark tones, some bright tones. Let's create some contrast. Essentially, if you look at the histogram, it's one big mid-tone. There's no darks, there's no brights. If we grab the contrast slider, that's going to help straight away. So we can do that for sure. Another thing that's going to be pleasing though is mid-tone contrast. So the contrast is adjusting the shadows and the highlight side of things, but let's get the middle of the histogram and make the darks darker there, the brights brighter. You can do that in the curves. Go down to lights, pull the lights up, and that'll just lift anything with those bright tones, particularly in the mid-tone area. And now same with the darks, darken them down, and it just gives us a nice sense of depth now because we have that wider tonal range. Look at the histogram now, before, after, nice and easy. The color, kind of like where the color's at. I'd probably dial back the magenta slightly because there's a beautiful green in there. We'll bring that out by just dialing the magenta back, potentially cool it down further. So we're really leaning into the cooler tones, blues and greens. I think it just works really well, especially because there was no light. Then the last thing really, with an adjustment brush, I push K, just popping the inside of the wave to really draw the eye in. I'd bring the whites up on the brush and just hitting the inside there like so, lifting that. And that's really where I'm trying to draw the eye. If I wanted to, I'll push K and maybe heavier contrast on the edges now, and that will help further push the eye into the center of the wave. And that's why I just think this type of frame and composition works really well. Let's do before and after. Before, after. It looks very dramatic, but all we did was really increase the contrast. You know, we haven't even touched vibrance or saturation. Maybe I'd apply a slight amount of vibrance in there. I always use my histogram as a reference for the overall brightness and exposure. It still has a little bit of room to be brighter if we wanted to. We could potentially bring the whites up a touch more like that. Maybe dial the highlights back slightly just because it's looking a little bright up here. but that's where I'll take it. Now, sometimes on these wave images, because I have quite a few from the same location, the wave is obviously flowing from the right to the left. It is nice to break up that flow, especially if on the website in the portfolio you've got several from this location. So sometimes in the crop I will flip it horizontally just to flow left to right. Now, not every comp or wave will suit that. It's amazing how differently, you know, the eye will travel through the composition, but I will do that every now and then. Something to keep in mind. If you have like an abstract, you know, an intimate scene, just keep it in mind, because we do read from left to right, so sometimes it can be way more pleasing if your subject matter is flowing in that direction. It's not always the case, but hey, something you can keep in mind anyway if you like. I've pushed done, and that way the edit now has kind of been saved, so you can see on that wave it's got the icon there. It's kind of how Lightroom does a catalog basically. Camera Raw will save it, Photoshop, and the little memory of the edit will just be accompanied with the raw file wherever the raw file is located. I've got a lot more to go through. There's definitely a good half a dozen, I think, that I'll be keeping from here at the moment, but I need to take my time and go through them. But I wanted to share some of this anyway while I could. I look forward to sharing the rest of them soon, either on the website, maybe one or two will make its way into the book that I hope to release eventually, that I'm slowly working on now anyway, coffee table book. Really enjoy working with faster shutter speeds for a change, and I just love being able to, you know, try and find those real little abstract moments. Like, look at this one. This is slow shutter again, but more in the sunrise, so the light is more of a backlight. Unfortunately, this one, what's really bugging me is the big open expanse on that top left. It would probably actually suit like a square crop for argument's sake, but I just don't really like having too many ratios in the portfolio. I typically am shooting 2 to 3 ratios, but yeah, sometimes with these waves, it's just so hard to compose it perfectly in real time. So the crop tool definitely gets a bit of a workout. And I often find that's why I enjoy those tighter focal lengths, because it helps clean up that background as well, which often isn't lending too much to the overall image. But yeah, lots to go through. It's going to be fun taking my time going through them. The processing, as you saw with this one, that looks a bit too blue now, to be fair. As I look back on it, I'll reduce the vibrance. But yeah, as you could see, it is quite an easy post-process. Obviously, this might get a little bit more adjustments slightly here and there. So different though to shooting the big grand scenes with backlight and big dynamic ranges. This is a lot simpler and typically a bit more fun to work with. The 100 to 400, I definitely can recommend it. I've been exclusively using this lens now for my telephoto work for 7 or 8 years, to be honest. Like I said in the video, once you shoot at this focal range, it's really hard to go back to a 70 to 200. That feels so short. So I have no problems using this lens. Yeah, it's a bit heavy for sure, but you know, what you are so thankful to have it when you have these types of moments arise. And obviously, typically I'm using it for the mountain scenes anyway, but it's a lens that I just will consider a staple part of my kit. If you have any questions at all, always just leave them below. I'll definitely get back to you. I appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you in a video soon.